After a disappointing end to the 2014 season, the 2015 Bengals believed they had a good enough roster to have another shot at success in the AFC. The year prior, they went 10-5-1 and in the wildcard round lost their 7th straight playoff game. Though Cincy had 4 Pro Bowlers in 2014, with 2 of them being their QB and wide receiver, they still lacked that Super Bowl DNA, and they proved that in the embarrassing loss in the wildcard round. Their QB, Andy Dalton, had some good performances throughout the season, but also had some bad ones. But this didn't stop his selection as a Pro Bowl alternative for an injured Aaron Rodgers. AJ Green had, to his standards, a down year, missing 3 games in 2014. He still managed to rack up 69 receptions on 1,041 yards and 6 TDs. The young duo of Geno Atkins and Carlos Dunlap terrorized offenses, but their defense still ranked 22nd in yards. Their offense ranked 15th in the NFL in 2014, but in their second year under Hugh Jackson as offensive coordinator, the Bengals offense expected a better 2015. A solid free agency and draft passed by as Week 1 approached. Their Week 1 matchup was in Oakland against a young, unproven Raiders squad under first-year head coach Jack Del Rio, and it's safe to say his home debut didn't go as planned. A healthy Bengals squad shined in the season opener in a 20-point win over the Raiders. Dalton headlined the show, throwing 2 TDs to Tyler Eifert. Tyler had suffered an elbow injury just a year ago in the last year's season opener, which ended his entire season. The Bengals looked ready and all in sync during the win, and Dalton threw his teammates praise for their ability to create plays out of nothing after the game. In Week 2, after a huge comeback win versus Detroit, the Chargers were set to face the Bengals next. In the first half, a couple mistakes by the Chargers had them down 14-6 by the end of the second. A touchdown early in the third put the Chargers right back in it, 14-13. But even after a second fumble by Bengals running back Jeremy Hill, Cincy's offense still proved to be unbearable in the win, 24-19. Dalton so far is having a perfect season, having not been sacked nor picked off through the first 2 weeks. Dalton's 3 TD performance spoiled Rivers' game where he surpassed Sonny Jurgensen in all-time TD passes. In Week 3, they headed to Baltimore to face a division rival. The Ravens entered the matchup 0-2 and were looking to avoid an 0-3 start. In the first half, they capitalized off the Ravens' miscues and took a convincing 14-0 lead. But after a slow third with a lone touchdown by Joe Flacco and an interception by Andy Dalton, the score wrote 14-7. The Ravens carried that momentum to the fourth, where they took a 17-14 lead. Dalton responded personally with a deep bomb to AJ Green on an 80-yard TD, regaining control of the contest. Flacco responded not too long after with a touchdown pass himself to another receiver who was having a monster game, Steve Smith. But since he put the game away with a 7-yard TD to Green, capping off his 200-yard receiving performance, also handing the Ravens their first 0-3 start in franchise history. After the game, defensive end Carlos Dunlap added salt to the wound of the rivalry with some unpleasant comments for the Baltimore fans. The offense shined for the 3rd game straight. The Bengals had their work cut out for them the next 3 weeks before the bye week. But other than a 17-point comeback win versus the Seahawks in Week 5, the Bengals tortured their other opponents, making them a team no one wanted to play. After the bye, they had to visit Heinz Field in the anticipated matchup. Since he had lost their last 3 against Pittsburgh, it was either going to end that streak or end their 6-game win streak they had. The Steelers started with a strong touchdown drive, but just a couple field goals happened by the Bengals after, foreshadowing the tone of this matchup. The Bengals defense showed out, forcing 3 interceptions, and after a touchdown pass by Dalton with 2 minutes left, the Bengals did it again, securing their 7th straight win through 7 games. Dalton led these Bengals to the top of the AFC North, and their defense weren't far behind. Matter of fact, they ranked amongst the top defenses in the NFL. The Bengals' 2 young pass rushers were having their best year as teammates. Veteran Reggie Nelson was also having a career year at the age of 32. Against the Browns in Week 9, Cincy extended their record-setting start to 8 wins in fabulous fashion. Andy Dalton was morphing into a star in front of our very eyes, having his most impressive season to date. In the win, he connected 3 times in the end zone to his favorite tight end target. Ahead the Bengals, in Week 10, they had a game on Monday night against a harmless Texans team. The Bengals led 6-3 even after in the first half suffering many penalties. Texans QB Brian Hoyer suffered a concussion in the second half, making the task of closing out this Monday night win even easier. But the Texans backup managed to score one early in the fourth to D-Hop, and after a series of punts by both teams, the Texas defense secured the upset, forcing a fumble with 40 seconds left on the clock. The Bengals' hype train was shortly halted after the demoralizing loss. In Week 11, they faced their toughest matchup yet with a trip to Arizona for the battle against the 7-2 Cardinals. These two were Super Bowl contending teams in their own right. Ultimately, the Cardinals, led by former former Bengal Carson Palmer narrowly won an entertaining heavyweight bout filled with high-scoring quarters by both teams. Cincy still had a strong showing and held their own versus a top NFC team. But the fact still remained, they were on a 2-game skid. Cincy caught a break though, as they faced a 4-win Rams team on a 3-game losing streak. And in Week 13, they followed this with a 37-3 win over Cleveland, led by Andy Dalton passing for 2 TDs and rushing for 1. Seemingly in Week 14, all hell broke loose. The Bengals were embarrassed at home against the Steelers and allowed more than 10 points for just the second time in the last 7 games. The defense now had the best scoring defense in the league, but after a 33-20 loss, their reputation took a hit. In just the first quarter, after an interception, Andy Dalton was injured on a tackle he tried to make stopping the return. He did not return, dooming the Bengals versus a hot Pittsburgh Steelers squad. The Steelers bullied the Bengals from pregame, but despite the loss, Cincy kept pushing forward in a defensive swarming performance the next week. The 49ers made too many mistakes to keep up with the team of Cincy's caliber and lost 24-14. With this win, the Bengals clinched their 5th straight playoff appearance. In Week 16, the Bengals faced the Broncos and took a 14-point lead early, but Denver rallied back, winning 20-17, blowing Cincy's chances at a top AFC spot. Through the most critical parts of the season, Dalton had been injured and the Bengals suffered from it. In the season finale, they beat a banged-up Ravens team to end the season 12-4, still finishing first in the AFC North. But with their starting QB who led them there injured, the Bengals were vulnerable. Dalton was ruled out for the wildcard matchup, leaving the fate of their best season in franchise history in a backup's hands. He still had one of the best rosters around him, having 8 Pro Bowlers in 2015. Andy Dalton missed out on the Pro Bowl, but still put up some efficient numbers. AJ Green earned his 5th straight Pro Bowl to start his career, catching 86 passes, racking up 1,297 yards and 10 TDs. Tyler Eifert led the team in receiving TDs though with 13. Their number 2 defense contained plenty stars with 2 double-digit sack guys and an uncle in the secondary catching 8 interceptions. The Bengals offense ranked 7th in 2015, improving on both sides of the ball from last year. The Steelers awaited them in a cold, humid winter night in Cincinnati. The NFL took precautions before the team set to face off, placing numerous officials at the midfield to prevent any pregame confrontation. The game had a scoreless first quarter after a horrible pick from McCarron with 5 minutes left in the second. The Steelers scored the first points of the game with a Chris Boswell field goal. After the Steelers went up 6-0 at the half, people in Cincinnati and at home watching knew what game they were in for. McCarron turned the ball over again, leading to another field goal. The next time the Steelers got a crack at scoring though, they took advantage of it. Martavius Bryant caught a beautiful touchdown, putting Pittsburgh up over the disheartened Bengals 15-0. The hard-hitting battle continued throughout the closing moments, setting the stage for an interesting fourth quarter. A pass interference put the Bengals inside the 5, not even 30 seconds into the fourth quarter. Cincy scored a touchdown, cutting the deficit to 8. Late in the third, Big Ben went out with a big hit, so in the fourth, Landry Jones played as starting QB. After a punt by the Steelers, the Bengals put together a good drive, ending in an AJ Green TD with 1 minute and 50 seconds left, taking their first lead. On the very next pass of the game, Landry Jones threw a pick inside their own end zone, seemingly sealing their fate. But on the very next play, Jeremy Hill, a player who struggled with fumbles the entire season, fumbled the ball right back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Roethlisberger returned, completing a big fourth down, but then on a 1st and 10, on a ball down the middle of the field to Antonio Brown, the Steelers receiver was targeted to the helmet in one of the most brutal hits in NFL history. The hit gave Pittsburgh field goal position, where Boswell finished the Bengals' Cinderella season in disastrous fashion. The Bengals had an ugly exit, and after the loss, the team now had lost 5 straight wildcard games. The following season, Cincy regressed completely with a 6-9-1 record, and the team continued to decline until the rise of Joe Burrow. And even though Joe Burrow's recent Super Bowl appearance was nice, Bengals fans will never forget the disappointing finishes of the 2010s.